Pokemon Sun and Moon, now with over 40 Pokemon and Kanto fan service or your money back. Crap jokes aside, I think that this is a great time to do the list. I've done a top 10 best list of my favorite Pokemon from Sun and Moon so far, and I think it's deserving to do a top 10 worst because now there's actually like 10 Pokemon that I can reasonably put on this list for not really enjoying too much. Like, I can go through this and say, yeah, I don't like about 10 of these guys, and we'll see what people think as well. I think that that's one of the best things about these videos, is it's really cool to talk and discuss about what people do and do not like about Pokemon Sun and Moon. So far, I love most of what I've seen out of this game, but that doesn't mean there can't be any flaws. And first, let's talk about Pyukumuku. Actually not on the list. So, judging from how I've reacted to it in my other videos, oh! I'm broke, guys, like, it had me. So, it can either go star mode, or it can do, like, literal fist, and it pushes out, and one might think I'm not a fan of it, and I'm not really, but it's not enough to dislike. Overall, its design is kind of cute, but until it gets weird, so as long as it doesn't start slapping things around with its insides, I'm still okay with it. So I don't think I'm gonna put it on this list just because it's a little too weird, but overall I think it's actually a kind of funny Pokemon that you can actually get a job throwing these things back into the ocean because they're little nuisances, and if you do it wrong they'll slap you with their insides. Also, they will just stay there and starve because they are super stubborn Pokemon. So cute, stubborn, I guess it works out. Not really on the list, but it's an interesting Pokemon that is worth mentioning at some point. So we have number 10, Charjabug. I don't think a lot of people like this Pokemon. Like, at first you see Grub and it's like, alright, that's gonna be our bug Pokemon. You can get over that however you want. And even its evolution, like, as we go through the evolutionary line, it starts to turn into a really cool Pokemon. But Charjabug is just a box, brick, thing. It's not really that cool of an idea or anything. I feel like it could have maybe been done a little better. But overall, I do think it's a clever play on words. You know, it is a USB bus. But it's still just a square that doesn't really have too much design going for it. Even though it's a middle stage evolution, probably will be forgotten by a lot of people, and then the evolution will get a lot more praise. Number 9, we have Gumshoos. So, I don't think Gumshoos' design is necessarily bad. Like, it kind of has a Pangoro feel to it, which is alright, but I think it is a waste with what we had about Yungoos. That Yungoos, while also having an interesting design, mostly I just didn't like its face and its Donald Trump haircut. Like, the memes coming from this Pokemon, the evolutionary line, is absolutely priceless, but I think there was a bit more potential that could have come out of Yungoos instead of just kind of taking it in the complete opposite. You know, we have a young, feisty, hungry Pokemon to an incredibly old, impatient Pokemon. I see what they're going for, but I think that it takes away from what this Pokemon could have been, so I'm not really a huge fan of it. Like, when I first saw it, I just thought, eh. Number 8, we have Mudbray. When it comes to Mudbray and even its evolution, I'm not a huge fan of like horse Pokemon in general, or even horses in real life, so this design doesn't really have me. It's kind of like this weird donkey Pokemon, looks a bit dopey, has a stupid haircut, and then for some reason has like the goat eye thing going on for it. I think that a pre-evolution was necessary for Mudsdale, and I do like the idea behind Mudsdale because it's a Clydesdale, and it kind of takes it to the next level, but the evolutionary line isn't majestic enough to really follow through with it. I could maybe see an ugly duckling kind of thing, but when you're intentionally making your Pokemon kind of meh to build up into an evolutionary line, I think it's just going to be open for criticism. When I first saw Mudbray, not impressed, and that was how I felt with the first reaction. Next up, we have Bounsweet. So, not a huge Cherim fan, not a huge fan of edible Pokemon as well, and Bounsweet is a Mangosteen, and it's just kind of a weird thing. Like, we can go and look at its gameplay as well, and it's just a fruit with eyes, and it doesn't do much else but stand on its teeny tiny little legs and be a fruit with eyes. There's nothing really impressive about it, and it's just, like, it just sits there and doesn't really do too much. So I'm not too excited for it as a Pokemon. Just the Pokemon that imitate real life items or food or like certain inanimate objects, it's not really a huge design thing that I really enjoy. So I'm not a huge fan of Bounsweet. I also think that it's just like, it's weird, just like this lumpy kind of Pokemon with a shell that's a fruit that's kind of happens to be a Pokemon. So, not a huge fan, but let's go on and look at Bruxish. So, Bruxish is going to be number 6 on the list, and it's mostly just because you can look at it and be like, ugh. I do think it isn't the worst Pokemon that has been revealed so far, which is why it's only number 6. But at the same time, I'm not a huge fan of Pokemon like Alomomola, Luvdisc, just like those awkward, fishy kind of Pokemon that are just there to be an awkward fish in the game. Same thing for that 5th generation Carvana-ish Pokemon, I can't remember it, like Basculin. I'm not a huge fan of Basculin either. So just kind of like this big-lipped triggerfish that has like a weird flower on its head, some crazy colors, and it's like an intentionally ugly, pretty Pokemon. It's not a huge design thing that I'm a fan of, and that's kind of it. Next up for number 5, we have Comfey. Either way, it's like a tiny little fairy Pokemon, and I think it's kind of weird because mostly when you just break down its design, like what is this? It's just a ball with eyes on it and like some kind of crazy wavy hairstyle, but its tail it puts flowers on, so really this is like the rest of its body, and that kind of creeps me out a bit. Now I know it's a lei, and Hawaiians have their leis, and there's all kinds of cultural things around it, but you don't have to turn it into a Pokemon. Like, really, I think that that's the biggest thing. This didn't need to really exist. The cultural significance can be there without it, and that's when it crosses the line of, like, inanimate or representative objects becoming Pokemon. Not a thing that I'm a really big fan of, so it's just, like, this tiny thing that really doesn't accomplish much to me, and it spins around, and it's kind of awkward. I first saw it, I don't see much potential for this Pokemon overall, and I don't really enjoy it. Like, look at this! That thing just looks weird, and it's just unsettling, and I don't want to have anything to do with it. So next up, we have all the Zygarde forms, because technically the Zygarde forms are going to make their first appearance in Pokemon Sun and Moon. So that's the thing. Like Zygarde, it's an alright Pokemon, but then when I started seeing the forms, like I am one of those people that is absolutely against this thing existing. Complete form, awkward, weird design that I've talked about in the past I wasn't a fan of. Like, if this was what Z version was based off of, I would have been very, very upset. But at least it's a little downplayed in Pokemon Sun and Moon. Same with the other designs. I think while it is cool we have, like, Zygarde Dog, it's still, like, a little lanky and tiny. And then we have this thing, whatever the cores and cells are. At first, I was like, oh man, this is cute. It could be, like, a new Pokemon that shows the 7th generation. Then it started to have all this, like, weird stuff to do with Zygarde, and really didn't care too much for it about that. We have like this dead-looking cell thing that becomes the core, and then all of a sudden it becomes this, and then the complete form just doesn't feel like a Pokemon at all. The design is more Digimon, if anything, or some kind of like weird mech thing, but certainly not a Pokemon. This is not, like if you have a lineup of every Pokemon, you just kind of slap this in here, you don't feel like it fits in, and that's a big reason as to why I am not a fan of it. Number 3, Magearna. Again, when I first saw Magearna, I was a little off-put, and I was actually upset. I'm like, oh no, if this is like the design idea that is coming out of the 7th generation, not that fantastic. Now, when I also revealed it, like, or when I did the reveal video on it, I put a lot of investment into this Pokemon because I was saying, alright, 7th generation's next, there's not going to be a Z version. I was able to make that prediction, which I'm super happy about. When I saw Magearna, it's like, well, if this is 6th generation, at least it's not tainting 7th generation, but if it's 7th generation, then I get proven right. So, tough call right there. I just think that, like, a mechanical Pokemon that's been brought to life is just one of those things that can be done well in a certain way. But the design about this, it feels like kind of like Deontay, but not really, but a little too mechanical and almost forced in its own way. I know this Pokemon is getting a huge following in Japan, and also a lot of other people do really like its delicate design, but it's not for me, and that's when we go to number 2 on this list. So I have to go over to Cerebi because this Pokemon hasn't been officially revealed yet, and it's Sunaba, or Sunaba, like sunbathe, but sand thing. Either way, that's a Pokemon. And when I saw the Ghost Sandcastle Pokemon, I was not won over at all. It just feels like a lazy design, and it's just a pile of a Pokemon that doesn't really seem like it does anything. It seems miserable as a Pokemon, and it just seems fairly dumb. What we have information, a grudge that dwells inside a pile of sand turns into a Pokemon. Truly a terrifying creature. I don't think it's terrifying, but that's all we have to say about this Pokemon. That a grudge that turns into a pile of sand. I mean, Baynet is at least a grudge that possesses a doll, and that's kind of spooky and works out with the ghost type lore and can become a pretty cool Pokemon. This is literally if you just went to the beach, scooped up some sand, said some mean things to it, and then I just imagine it having like some kind of horrific scream of just like because it's a blob that gained life that it doesn't want to have, and it's still pretty dumb. But the only thing that's more dumb is its evolution. A bigger sandcastle Pokemon. Shirodasuna, I think is what this is called, and it's the sandcastle Pokemon, goes ground, and it steals life force from other Pokemon. Those Pokemon's grudges turn into a new Sunaba. Wow, I just actually realized maybe I'm being punished by something here because all of the grudges and salts from other YouTubers and other channels and YouTube comments has possessed Pokemon in my channel with this right here. Imagine how many of these guys could exist off the hatred around my channel and then overwhelm me. That's actually a truly terrifying thought to think about. But in any case, the design, it's just a sandcastle. And has, I never did this as a kid. I never put the spade in the top. It kind of looks like a stupid hat. So I think I've talked about how pitiful this thing is long enough. Like, I like the idea of a ghost type, but like ghost is my favorite typing. I want to see really awesome ghost types in Pokemon Sun and Moon, which is maybe why I might be overcritical of it. At the same time, I've seen a lot of people that think, wow, this is dumb. It's cool that it's like an arena trap Pokemon maybe, and it also is like some kind of ghost ground and really plays on it well, but the design is very lazy to me, and I don't think it's pretty awesome. Now again, guys, do not get me wrong. Just because I have a list of Pokemon I am not a fan of, does that not mean I am against Pokemon Sun and Moon in any way. This actually looks like it could become one of my top 3 Pokemon experiences, because here's how it goes. 2nd generation, so Johto version is my favorite. Actually, Kalos, 6th generation was my 2nd favorite, and this seems like, in its current state, I might enjoy Pokemon Sun and Moon more than Kalos. I'm actually scared that it could overtake Johto to a degree because there's so many features, and it looks like it's going to turn into a very impressive game. Also, like I already did my top 10 favorite Pokemon from this region, and Mimikyu is already like in my top 3 favorite Pokemon. I can't wait to see how much further it goes. If this is one of the cool things. Look at my icon right now. That currently, as of making this video, I have a Mimikyu icon because I love this Pokemon so much. I love it more than Klefki, and Klefki was the hype when it came out in 6th generation for me. So there are so many things I'm very excited about. A lot of new gameplay features except for hyper training. But at the same time, if I hate hyper training, that doesn't mean I have to forsake this entire game. It just means there's a feature I don't like, which anything shows my appreciation even further. That if I really enjoy or I'm really passionate about something, you have to be critical about it in some ways just to kind of make sure your passion is in check. If you just blindly love everything, then it's kind of a more misguided passion, and if you also blindly hate everything, then you're not really accomplishing much of anything. So there's a good balance here, and every generation has Pokemon I'm not a fan of, mostly in 5th generation, and there's quite a few in the 7th generation as we're kind of going into it. So guys, enjoy the video. Hope you all have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching.